and welcome to UC Today. My name is Kieran Devlin and today's session is the big UC update for VOSS. I am delighted to be joined by Mike Frayne, CEO of VOSS. Mike, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Kieran. Thank you very much.
And I am delighted to explore VOSS in more detail. Before we get onto the company itself, I'm very curious to learn more about yourself, Mike. Could you please share a bit about your professional background?
Sure. So I've been I have to think about this because the years go by so quickly, but I've been doing this for about 40 years, always worked in tech. I started off in software development and then worked my way up into management. I landed up running a IT department for a financial institution and then decided I'd go and try and create my own company. So I created a little software company, which crashed and burned quite spectacularly. But, not undeterred, I carried on and landed up setting up a services business on a fairly global basis. And we landed up IPOing that in the Nordics in 2000. I was also involved in a wholesale billing company, which we listed on the London Stock Exchange. And part of the reason I got so much grey hair is because we did 2 IPOs in 2 months. And so that was quite an interesting and hectic time. But yeah, so background's all been tech, pretty much all I've done, yeah.
Great. And what would you say are some of your favourite fun facts about yourself?
Oh, fun facts. So probably when I think about the tech thing, I started off my life not ever thinking that would be a direction I went into. So when I was at school, at senior school, I went to a boys' school. And like most boys, we were always keen to kind of meet up with girls. So we used to try and do extra classes and whatever we could to, establish some contacts. And one of the things I signed up for was a computer programming extra class. So instead of meeting Felicity or Francis or someone cute like that, I landed up meeting Fortran programming for our sins, which was not quite the expected outcome. But interestingly, I didn't enjoy it at all. And when I finished school, I still had no freaking idea what I wanted to do with my life. But I was quite sure I didn't want to go into programming. But alas, because I had that as background, when I started looking for work, went to kind of placement agencies and stuff, and I landed up getting a job with one of the banks because of that IT background. So it's just kind of a weird way that life sort of works out in unexpected ways. And even when I started, I have a academic background in psychology. I always thought I'd diversify and go back into that, but just never landed up doing that. So and here I am, 40 years later, still doing it. Maybe it's time to diversify now, I don't know. But I often joke because I did child psychology, so I often joke, that's quite useful in just managing.
Yeah, managing people.
Yeah, I was going to say grown-ups, but we've got to be careful about that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But focusing on the job yourself, what part of being CEO of VOSS are you most passionate about? What do you most enjoy?
It's a massively diverse job by definition, Kieran. I mean, we got shareholders, we've got board members, we've got customers geographically in different parts of the world. So it's a fair amount of travel. I think it's just the diversity. And also, when you're in tech, if you're standing still, you're kind of going backwards. So there's constant change and evolution. And the challenge, of course, is there's a million directions you could pivot into. So trying to pick the right things, or maybe put it differently, try not to make too many mistakes is key to keeping it going. So, it's always new. It's not like you're going to work, you're doing the same thing every day. And there's obviously a part of that that's routine. But I think the great thing about my job is it just is a lot of constant evolution, interesting, challenging things happening in the industry and trying to figure out how we can, best embrace those into our own strategic approach. So, yeah. I'm also a little bit of I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? But, I always think that you can do something better. So I'm constantly looking at what we do and how we do it. So trying to have a kind of an approach to just sort of, measuring things, making sure they are effective and as efficient as possible internally. So that's kind of challenging as well. You're never happy with the way things are because you can always tweak them and make them better. So there's no real kind of scope to be just sitting back and feet up or rushing off and playing golf 5 days in a row and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I know you just highlighted how holistic and diverse your job is, but I was wondering if you could potentially walk us through a typical day, what that looks like for you, as with obviously the massive caveat that it can be incredibly varied.
yeah, Kieran. So I guess I say variety is the spice of life. I think It's probably typical days difficult. I try to have typical weeks is probably a better way of thinking about it. So tend to try and spend kind of Mondays kind of doing updates with the teams about what's going on the sales side of the project, etc. So there's a fair bit of that sort of interactions with the teams and stuff. But to be honest, the rest of the days tend to be just depending on what's happening and where it's happening. Obviously, there's a bit of travel involved. We're fairly geographically spread, so typical day might be spending half the day at Heathrow or something silly. Yeah. So yeah, it's super difficult. I mean, one tries to keep a theme of the kind of things you got to keep your finger on the pulse. But despite what they say, when you're running a company, quite a lot of issues. People always think about delegating, but there's quite a lot of things that bubble up that you need to kind of deal with and be on top of. I tend to be quite hands-on in the company, so I'm quite involved with just detail things, day-to-day things, and as a consequence, get pulled into lots of conversations. Yeah.
And we
So
found
typical days atypical.
Yeah, well, of course. It's almost like it could be a typical month, not just a typical week. We've got to find out a little bit more about your Mike, and now we move on to finding a little more about VOSS, the company. How would you describe VOSS in a nutshell?
So VOSS is essentially at its heart an automation and analytics company that helps our customers to efficiently and more effectively operate their UC platform. So at the heart of it, that's what we do.
Oh, that really is a nutshell. That's brilliant. But moving into a bit more detail, let's discuss more about where did VOSS come from? What is its geographical presence and overall size? Let's expand beyond the nutshell into a real clear overview of what you guys are like.
Yeah, like so many of those elevator pictures, you get out the elevator and you think, what the hell does that really mean? Yeah, just so generic. Yeah. So yeah, but history is that we came across the opportunity. Well, it was kind of before I joined VOSS, where the team started working with Cisco, and Cisco were trying to deliver a UC stack to service providers to take to market as a platform that they could essentially put enterprise customers on and deploy as a UC as a service capability. And the service providers would say to them, well, where's the OSS stack on top? How do we manage this thing? And just go like, well, what do you mean? How do we manage this thing? Because obviously you've got network components, hard, storage components, and then all the apps, and each of those has got its own portal to manage the things. And kind of the service providers were saying, well, that's not how we work. We need some portal that sits on top of that. And the guys had, just by sheer coincidence, been working with some part of Cisco and speaking to them about capabilities that they'd worked with before in a different industry in terms of kind of having a management portal sitting on top of those and the provisioning layer. And so Cisco invited us into their labs and we jointly built a kind of provisioning capability, so this portal that sat on top of that infrastructure. So, often joke, people talk about unified communications, but the one thing it isn't really is unified. There's lots of different components, and you can either manually unify the different bits to deliver a service, or you can try and use some kind of platform to do that for you. And that's essentially the gap that VOSS jumped into. So obviously over time we diversified from Cisco to look after other technologies, Zoom, Avaya, Microsoft, obviously, which is the one on everyone's lips at the moment. And so that's been part of the evolution. Obviously, we've grown geographically, so we now have customers in most of the major geographies, so APAC, Central Europe, UK, US, South America, Africa. So we've got pretty much customers spread in most of the geographies, and consequently, we've got people supporting those located in most of the geographies. We're about 110 people size-wise, yeah. We're about 68 customers, and I'll talk a little bit more later because I think it pops up about the customer profile as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, we're coming to that shortly. But firstly, I'm very curious, especially a company like VOSS with a really specific niche and level of expertise, area of expertise. What would you say is unique about your company culture?
We sort of touched on it a little bit briefly. So we tend to be super transparent with people about what's going on and not going on. And that fosters quite a strong team mentality. So, I'd say that we're quite good at getting stuff done because people will get together and make it happen. If people aren't kind of precious about, hey, I'm in this department, so not my problem. That sort of doesn't really exist as a concept. So there's a strong let's get stuff done mentality, pull people together. I think there's also a strong acceptance that change is only sort of static thing is constant change. So people are used to adapting and being agile and adopting change. So that makes it easier. And then, as I say, I keep nagging people about, hey, what can we do better? What can we learn from what we've done before? So there's that kind of concept, hopefully, throughout the company of trying to do a better job. We also just tend to be, the basics are, you've got to be good at looking after customers. You've got to give customers value and then you've got to look after it. It's not really rocket science, is it? Yeah.
And are there any recent awards or accolades you guys have received that you're especially proud of and you think really illustrates what you offer as a company?
Yes, so obviously UC Today has, for the past 5 years, recognized us, so we're grateful and appreciative of that and obviously humbled by that. We've had other awards from Megvite Top 50, we were the Gartner Cool Vendor, Stratocast have had us in our Red Pack. So yeah, we've had a number of and I think, those things, obviously they are important, but they probably, winning customers is more important to us than those things. So, you focus on both of those things clearly because obviously the visibility of it. But yeah, no, we have been fortunate to have been awarded a number of them.
And that's quite the what you alluded to there about the winning customers is a nice segue into the next section about the market. How do you guys approach the market, and how would you describe your partner ecosystem and go-to-market strategies?
Yeah, so I think if you think about what we do, we help customers reduce complexity. So our customers tend to be big and have complex infrastructure from a UC capability. So they tend to be geographically distributed. They tend to have legislative requirements to do particular things. They might be diversified in lots of agencies that all want to do things a little bit different. So we kind of at the very high end of the large enterprise market is the end customer. Our go-to-market strategy is threefold. So we work those customers directly. We talk to them directly. Sometimes we engage with them directly. Secondly, we work through resellers. So people in different geographies, there are different resellers we work with. So WWT, Presidio, people like that in the US. Obviously, we work quite closely with a couple of the Indian SIs, Tech Mahindra, HCL, etc. And then some regional ones as well. And the third component is, which we alluded to a little bit before, is we work quite closely with the managed service providers. So managed service providers are standing up a platform and then using our capabilities to do that service delivery layer on top of the platform to their end customers. So that's quite obviously an interesting way for us to get to market as well. Other thing about that specific one is allows us to go down market. So as I said, most of our customers are large enterprises because the value proposition resonates much more strongly the larger and more complicated you are. But that lets us get down market. We don't have to necessarily be able to get because they're delivering multiple customers, so you're getting scale through aggregation rather than individually by customer. Yeah. So the other dimension of the ecosystem for us is the infrastructure, technology vendors that we're working with. So if it's Microsoft, Zoom, Avaya, whoever's SBC providers, Oracle, and people like that, whose technologies we are integrating and managing on behalf of our end customers. So we have to have close relationships with those guys by definition as well.
Great. And moving on to the customers themselves, who would you say typically buys your product or services? Can you detail your ideal customer profile and the tech buyer persona that you guys are really looking for?
So, yes, I can, but maybe stepping back a little bit. So we have 3 different products that we take to market, 3 different solutions, yeah? One of them is a migration tool, the other one is the automation tool, and the third one is the analytics and assurance tool. They tend to have slightly different buyer communities, and there's possibly a different RCP for those. But I alluded to it earlier, the bigger and more complicated they are, the better. So our RCP tends to be people that have got a geographically distributed footprint, people that are employing 10,000 plus employees, often people that are looking to change from a legacy environment. So if they on X and want to go to Y, that sort of transition period is one often when it's easy for us to engage. So those are probably the key ones for us. Obviously, industry-specific things are important to us. But again, its size is perhaps more important than industry. So people that have multi-agencies like healthcare providers or, federal states in the US that have got departments that sit underneath those and they need to manage those individually, but are trying to consolidate a platform to deliver, consistent solutions across all of those departments are interesting customer categories for us. Yeah, but the bigger the better is the easy answer.
And, we've touched on briefly across this conversation about the exact technology you guys are working on and as well as the strategies and expertise you share with customers. But I guess we could just delve into a bit more detail. What are your key products and technologies, and what features would you say really elevate you guys in today's very dynamic landscape?
Yeah. So we try to look at the UC space as a continuum of evolution from you sitting on some legacy environment that needs to be managed. You need to understand what's in that environment. Sometimes people have assets that they've been using for a while, but they're not clear about what they got and what they're using. So we have tools that can address that part of the market, discovering what's there, giving them reports about what they're using, what they're not doing. Then the next phase of that is if they want to transition from those legacy environments to new environments, we've got migration capabilities. So having established what they've got and more importantly, what they need, because a lot of people are just migrating all that old stuff without kind of cleaning it up, which seems a bit senseless. So yeah, we can then pick up that data and migrate it, reconfigure it, and push it into whatever that new environment is. So try to support the process of transitioning into that new technology, so you retain as much of the business IP in that legacy system into the new system where we can. And then obviously once we've got it in that new environment, then we've got tools to help them manage that environment. So just essentially do day-to-day management tasks. We try and automate those tasks, whichever ones, and they tend to be different tasks for different people. So I think the key about VOSS is that it's not a point solution. It's very hard to say, hey, there's this pain point and we solve it. It's a platform that essentially looks across that whole UC stack. And obviously different people have different pain points depending on what they're trying to do and where they're trying to go. So it's very hard to categorize and say, okay, look, people are trying to do this and therefore we solve that problem. And that's why the buyer community is quite different for us. Depending on who's got what pain point, you tend to land up talking to a number of people. And because it's a platform, you tend to have to talk to all kinds of people. So there's product people, sales people. Obviously, you get caught up with finance and all those people in the deals because they tend to be fairly large. And then obviously, we also have the assurance and analytics capability. So once we've got the platform up and running, we then can monitor that platform, provide analytics on the platform about what's happening there, give alerts when there are problems and stuff with operating that platform. So we try to look through that whole life cycle, and over time we're building up assets to sort of fill that out so that we can almost be like a single point that people can, as a vendor, help them manage their UC, their full UC stack. Yeah. And obviously we try to do that across different tech. So as I said, we that's one of the things we've got to keep up to date is we just got to keep moving with where the market's moving. Yeah.
And this touches on the previous question, but I was wondering if you could give us some more detail about what a typical implementation looks like for you guys, and what does the ongoing support and customer success post-implementation look like? I've had conversations with you guys about the transition from the VOSS discovery and audit process all the way through right-sizing the existing estate, and the importance of it as an ongoing process.
Yeah. So as you say, people often think of the discovery thing as a one-off thing. We'll go and clean it up, and then if you have the conversation 2 years later, guess what? So yeah, you do. You need to have that discipline of constantly evaluating what you got. So again, because we have a platform approach to the capabilities we deliver to our customers, the platform is almost by definition quite configurable. So deploying it's super simple. We obviously have it up in the cloud, so you could switch it on and start using it literally straight away. But the work and effort is configuring it around the way people want to use it and to resolve particular pain points that people have. So those configuration projects can take more or less time depending on what specifically the customer is trying to do. Obviously, they vary a little bit for the product. So for example, on the analytics side, different people want to monitor different things and have dashboards that have this and that and this thing. The guy wants to. So it's a very configurable platform, and the deployments are super easy. The configurations can be quite time consuming depending on what people are trying to do with the platform ultimately. Obviously, once you've got it deployed, then by definition, we have a customer success team. So, it goes from sales to, by definition, deployment into customer success. So, all of our customers are on SaaS-based arrangements with us commercially. So clearly looking after those customers, ensuring we've got adoption, trying to get them to understand new features we're building. You've got to keep adding value. You can't just sell stuff and then hope they're going to kind of love you forever. It doesn't quite work that way. Yeah, got to buy flowers now and then.
Absolutely. And talking about those engagements with customers, what would you say are the key topics that are dominating your conversation with customers and partners at the moment? What are they most interested in or curious about? And what sort of challenges would you say they're really facing ahead of 2025?
So it's probably a couple of buckets. I mean, one can't have any conversation without AI, kind of jumping in, and into it. But let's get back to that in a moment. Again, perhaps a couple of buckets. So there's quite a lot of people that are still operating, you see, from legacy on-premise based environments and are looking to move to the cloud. So we see that a lot. And people are in that journey. Could be, they're partly migrated because very few people do it in one big project. It's just too complicated and too high risk. So people are often through that migration journey in some way. So obviously engaging with them and helping them with that migration is ideal for us because we get to understand what they're trying to do, get to position the kind of follow-on capabilities that we able to help with them. So that's that sort of migration. We on this and we need to go there. As I said, the industry keeps changing and people need to change with it. And obviously we all know what happened with COVID. There was this mass adoption of Teams and Zoom, etc. But the problem is people didn't necessarily get rid of all the old stuff. So now they got Teams and they got this and they got that and they still got their legacy stuff. So the other component we're seeing is people trying to rationalize all that stuff. So hang on, do I really need 5 different tools to do the same thing? In fact, I didn't even know I had 5 different tools. So can we see that type of thinking? So I wouldn't call it necessarily a cost thing, but it's an asset management thing. People trying to understand what they got, what they're using, what they're not using, why pay for 5 licenses if we don't need them, etc. So that's sort of being able to look holistically at that platform and help people show them what they got and what they really need and what they're using through the analytics, etc. capabilities is another. And obviously that delivers cost saving and we all know people are trying to spend less money here.
And jumping off that question, how would you say your company approaches innovation? Do you guys have a very specific process for gathering feedback and idea generation?
I think there are 2 dimensions to that for us. The first is obviously being customer centric is super important. So if you've got customers and you've got good relationships with them, then you can speak to them about where they think they're going and what they think they're doing. Obviously, we engage, as I said, with the vendors, so they're not always as transparent about where they're going and what they're doing. So perhaps you're getting a little bit of filtered information that way. But the vendors are often talking to the customers about where they're going. So what you don't get from the vendors, you can pick up sometimes from the customers. Obviously, when we engaging in the sales cycle, we understanding what people are trying to do and where they're trying to go strategically, what they want to look like in 2 years' time. So that's another source of input. So, generally the best strategies are customer-driven ones because we know they're relevant. Else you read stuff somewhere and you figure, well, that's a good idea, but of course no one's buying it. Yeah, because as we know, just because something's new and sexy doesn't mean people are necessarily spending money on it yet. It's very customer-centric, but obviously we keep in touch with industry, analysts, read a lot, keep an eye on what our competitors are doing, etc. So there's that sort of top-down customer-centric thing, and then just scanning the market and keeping in touch with that. So we have people who are, doing competitive analysis. We're tracking what our competitors are doing. Obviously, when we're doing POCs in competition with them, we try and suss out why we've won or not won and take those lessons. So it gets back to that continuous improvement thing, just constantly trying to figure out where we can tweak things, where we can do them better, what gaps we've got, etc. Yeah.
And one final question before I let you go, Mike. What do you guys see as the biggest opportunity in our industry right now?
Yeah. So, I think maybe can answer that question too. As I think for VOSS, there's some serious opportunities which we haven't exploited, which is that we have this platform that currently we very UC focused in terms of of what we do. But that platform, that domain management could be translated into other domains. So just looking at the broader Microsoft space is interesting. There's Exchange and all kinds of things that have similar problems to what the Teams environment has. So that for us strategically is a direction that we quite aggressively are looking at and doing some work on. Industry-wise, by definition, the most important evolution is just what's happening with AI. As I said up front, you can't. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous, and the problem isn't about AI, but it's what you can do with AI. We all know it's an enabler. So there's got to be outcomes related to AI, but they're just massive, aspects. Internally, we're using it to be more efficient in the way we write and test and document and quality assure our code. We're applying it to the way we do our business development work and learning lessons and just gathering data. You got so much more access to understanding what's happening out there. And of course, customers as well. For them, they're looking at the way they've done things, their processes, and how they can optimize those processes. And AI is a massive kind of enabler to make that better for everybody and quicker and more efficient. Yeah. So, we all know what the industry is saying about, productivity levels, how those are going to escalate. And obviously, interestingly, we all know that the higher productivity levels are, the better overall economies are. So that's overall a good thing. I know people worry about AI and jobs being lost, etc. But I don't really see it that way. I just think we're just going to get better at doing things, and that'll be good for everybody.
Excellent. Well, I think there's a very optimistic note on which to end today's conversation. But this has been a really good session. I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you, Mike. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kieran. Yeah, very much appreciate the time, and thank you.
And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share on social media, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
I've been Kieran Devlin of UC Today. Thanks for watching.
Take care. Bye-bye now.